I turned 75 this spring. At this age, mornings come slowly, like old friends knocking politely before entering. My house, the house my late husband and I built with our bare hands, has always greeted me with a warmth no sunlight could match. Every creaking wooden stair told a story. Every wall remembered a laugh, a cry, a lullaby. I thought I would spend the rest of my days here, safely tucked among memories. But life, it seems, still carries the power to surprise and to wound. That afternoon was ordinary until it wasn't. The kettle was whistling on the stove, and I had just finished stitching a small tear in my shawl when I heard the front door open. My son's voice followed, but something in it felt different, too firm, too rehearsed. "Amy, we need to talk." In my 75 years, I had learned that whenever someone begins with "we need to talk," the conversation is rarely gentle. I turned slowly, my fingers still threaded with the calmness of my needlework. Behind him stood his wife, and behind her, her brother and parents, all standing in my home as if they had already measured it for curtains. My son cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Amy," he said, "this house, it's for my wife's family now. We've decided. You can pack your things." Just like that. 8 words, sharp as a knife. You can pack your things. I felt the world tilt, as if the floor beneath me remembered it was old and grew tired of holding me. My heart did not break loudly. It cracked softly, like porcelain losing its glaze. I stared at him, searching for the playful boy who once brought me flowers plucked from the neighbor's garden, proudly declaring, "For you, Amy." But the boy was gone. In his place stood a man with greed stitched into his expression. A man who believed age made me weak. His wife's mother stepped forward, bold enough to run her fingers across my wall. "We'll repaint this room first," she announced casually, as though I were already dead. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. "And where am I supposed to go?" I asked quietly. My son looked annoyed, as if I were asking something unreasonable. "We'll arrange something. Maybe a small room at Cha-Cha's place. It'll be easier for everyone." Easier for everyone. I looked at them one by one. The smug faces, the greedy eyes, the certainty that the old woman standing in front of them was powerless. My heart hurt, but beneath the pain, something else stirred. A memory. A secret. A promise kept between my late husband and me. There was a safe in my bedroom, hidden behind his portrait. They didn't know about it. They didn't know what it contained. They didn't know that I wasn't as powerless as they believed. I felt a strange calm wash over me. My son mistook it for acceptance. His shoulders relaxed, and he gave me a curt nod, as though he had just concluded a business deal. "Good," he said. "Start packing tonight." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply smiled, a small, knowing smile that made his wife's mother frown. I walked past them, every step steady, every breath deliberate. My son thought I was walking toward defeat. He didn't realize I was walking toward the safe, toward the truth, toward the power they never imagined I had. As I reached my bedroom door, I paused and whispered, more to myself than to them, "This house has a longer memory than you think." Then I closed the door behind me, ready to open the safe, and ready to begin my revenge. The moment I closed my bedroom door behind me, the noise from the living room softened into a dull, distant murmur. They were already discussing furniture placement. My furniture. I heard my son laugh, a sound that once brought me comfort. Now it scraped against my heart like broken glass. I walked toward the portrait of my late husband. The same smiling photograph that had hung on our wall for decades. His eyes, warm and steady, met mine. In that moment, I felt him beside me again, as if he were whispering, "Go on, Mary John, show them what we prepared." My knees bent slowly as I reached for the frame. I pressed the tiny latch beneath it, the one only he and I knew existed. The portrait swung open like a small door, revealing the steel face of the safe behind it. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the wave of memories rushing through me. I remembered the night he first showed me the safe, his voice serious but gentle. "If something ever happens to me," he said, placing his hand over mine, "everything you need, everything that protects you is here." Back then, I didn't think much of it. We were younger, and life still felt endless. But now, standing alone at 75, those words returned like armor. I typed the code. Our wedding date. The lock clicked open with a familiar metallic sigh. Inside lay the life we built together. A bundle of investment certificates. A thick folder of legal documents. Our original property papers. And an envelope sealed with my husband's handwriting. But the most important item was sitting quietly at the bottom. A document stamped with the deep blue seal of the government. The updated will. The one my husband rewrote after noticing our son's growing entitlement. The one he told me to protect. In that will, everything, was left solely to me. Not a single rupee to my son. Not a corner of this house. Not a chair. Not a wall. Not a memory. I felt no joy in that moment. Only a tight ache in my chest. I never wanted revenge. I wanted love, loyalty, gratitude. Things no legal paper could force from someone whose heart had already turned cold. But now that he showed me his truth, I would show him mine. I carefully gathered the documents, placing them in my small handbag. The papers felt heavier than their weight. They carried decades of trust, years of sacrifice, and the final voice of my husband. Just then, I heard footsteps outside my door. My son's voice drifted through the wood. "Make sure she doesn't take anything expensive," he told someone. "We'll deal with her tomorrow." My breath steadied. I zipped my bag shut and stood tall. Tomorrow? Oh no, beta. Tonight I would begin. I opened the drawer beside my bed and took out a modest shawl. The one my husband liked best, and draped it across my shoulders. Then I walked to the door, opened it calmly, and walked past my son without a word. He blinked, surprised. "Where are you going?" "For air," I replied. "This old heart needs fresh breath." He shrugged, thinking nothing of it. He had no idea every breath I took from this moment forward was a step toward his downfall. I walked out through the gate, feeling the cool night air on my skin. Instead of turning left toward the neighborhood park, I turned right, toward the lawyer's office, still open for evening cases. As I walked, I whispered to myself, "You forgot who raised you, but I remember who I am." When I reached the quiet, dimly lit office, I knocked gently. The lawyer looked surprised to see me at such an hour, but when I opened my bag and placed the documents on his desk, his expression sharpened with respect. "Amy G," he said softly, "this changes everything." I nodded. "Good," I whispered, "because everything changed today." The next morning began not with birdsong, but with noise, loud, chaotic noise bursting from inside my house. I had barely slept, yet I felt more awake than ever. I stood quietly at the gate and watched as my son, his wife, and her parents carried suitcases inside my living room. They were laughing, arguing, pointing at walls, giving directions like the owners they believed they already were. I did not step in. I did not speak. I simply watched. They thought my silence meant surrender. But silence is a powerful thing. It can hide storms. At exactly noon, a white car pulled up at the gate. The moment the courier stepped out and asked for my son by name, I saw confusion ripple across the group. My son took the envelope casually at first, tearing it open as if it were another bank bill. Then I saw it, the moment his eyes froze. He read the first line once, then twice. Then his lips parted in horror. What is this?" he whispered. His wife snatched the papers from his hand and read them. Her face drained of color. Her parents leaned in, squinting, as if the letters might change if they stared long enough. Court summons. Mandatory appearance. Urgent matter of property dispute. It was a beautiful moment. Not because they were shocked, but because they finally understood they had misjudged the old woman they tried to discard. I stepped forward. "Let's go," I said calmly. "We don't want to keep the judge waiting." My son stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. In the courtroom, the air felt thick, humming with tension. Lawyers shuffled papers, the judge adjusted his glasses, and my son could not stop tapping his foot. His wife kept whispering frantic questions, but he had no answers. My lawyer placed the folder of documents gently on the judge's desk, like presenting a sacred truth. "Your Honor," he began, "the property in question was built and owned exclusively by the late Mr. and Mrs. Safter. Before his passing, Mr. Safter executed a revised will, leaving the entire estate solely to his wife, the plaintiff." My son stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. My mother is old. She forgets things." She was confused. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. My lawyer continued, opening each document with precision. The registered property papers with my husband's signature. The investment certificates tied directly to the house. The updated will sealed by the court, dated 2 years before my husband's death. And finally, a statement from the doctor confirming my full mental clarity. The judge scanned each paper, nodding slowly. I felt every tick of the clock echo in the silence. My son's confidence, which had carried him like a shield for years, now crumbled in front of everyone. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was firm, undeniable. This house, he declared, is the legal and sole property of Mrs. Safter. The defendant has no claim over it. Furthermore, the attempt to forcefully evict a senior citizen is a punishable offense. His wife gasped. Her parents exchanged panicked glances. My son's eyes welled with tears, not of regret, but of fear. He stepped toward me. Amy, please, you misunderstood. I was just. No, I interrupted, my voice steady. I understood perfectly. The judge ordered them to vacate the house immediately. The case was closed. Just like that. We walked out of the courtroom in silence, but inside me, something heavy loosened. Not joy. Not triumph. Something deeper. Freedom. Outside, the sun felt warm on my face. I took a slow, deep breath, letting the light settle into my bones. My son was still staring at me, waiting for forgiveness, or perhaps weakness. But I had neither to give. This time, I walked ahead of him, not as his mother, but as the woman he underestimated. And with each step, I felt stronger. When I returned home after the court hearing, I stood for a moment at the front gate, staring at the house that had witnessed my entire life. The afternoon light spilled across the veranda, touching the same cracked tiles my husband once promised to fix. The same windows my son used to press his small hands against. Despite everything that had happened, this house still embraced me like an old friend welcoming me back. But inside the gate stood a very different scene. My son, his wife, and her family were gathered on the lawn, surrounded by their bags and suitcases. Their earlier confidence had faded like cheap paint under rain. Their expressions were a mixture of disbelief, anger, and humiliation. Her mother was fanning herself dramatically. Her brother paced in circles, muttering curses. Her father glared at me as though I had personally snatched bread from his hands. And my son, my own flesh and blood, looked at me with wide, tearful eyes, searching for mercy he had never shown me. I walked up to them slowly, not out of cruelty, not out of pride, simply with the calm dignity that age teaches you after surviving both love and betrayal. Amy, my son whispered, stepping forward, please don't do this. We can talk. We can fix everything. For a brief moment I looked at him closely, trying to find even a flicker of the boy who once held my hand in crowded bazaars so he wouldn't lose me. But there was nothing left. He had allowed greed to carve away every gentle part of himself. I spoke softly, but my words were firm. Beta, you threw me out of my own home without hesitation. You decided my worth like pricing old furniture. Now the law has spoken. Pack your things and leave. His wife scoffed loudly. We did nothing wrong. You're twisting everything. You're lying. I raised a hand to silence her. A simple gesture, yet powerful enough to stop her mid-sentence. No, Iraplia. I am doing exactly what you all tried to do to me. The difference is, I don't need cruelty to make my point. Truth is enough. Her father stepped up, red-faced. This is unfair. We were promised this house. Promised. I cut in. By whom? A man who owned nothing here? A man who assumed his mother was weak, old, and ignorant. His silence was answer enough. They looked at me with resentment, as if I had betrayed them. The irony almost made me laugh. Slowly, I pushed the gate open wider. Please leave. I said in a tone that held no hatred. I am too old to argue. But I am not too old to protect myself. One by one they shuffled out. Some muttering. Some crying. Some glaring. My son lingered the longest, staring back at the house as if realizing too late the value of what he had tried to steal. Amy, he whispered again, his voice cracking. I made a mistake. Yes, I said quietly, you did. And can't you forgive your only son? I looked into his eyes. The same eyes that once begged me for toys, for sweets, for stories. Now they were begging for mercy. But forgiveness is not something you pull like a switch. It is earned. Beta, I said softly, I may forgive you one day, but I will never forget. His shoulders collapsed. He gathered his things and walked away, shrinking with every step. When the gate finally clicked shut behind them, the silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had heard in years. No shouting. No grith. No disrespect. Just peace. I stepped inside, locking the gate. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like my home again. Not a battleground of entitlement, but a sanctuary of memories. I walked to my husband's chair, the one near the window where he used to read the newspaper every morning. Sitting down, I felt his presence wrap around me like a warm shawl. I protected what we built, I whispered, touching the armrest. Just like you taught me. Later that week, I visited a local shelter for elderly women abandoned by their families. I donated a portion of my savings and promised monthly support. If my own child could not honor me, I would honor those who had no one at all. Revenge, I realized, does not always have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace. And so, at 75, I closed the final chapter of betrayal and opened a new chapter of strength. With a smile.